good afternoon. I'm glad to see you all here today with the different tech talks we have going on. My name is Dory Lutz. I'm a volunteer with the Oasis Connections program. And in this session, we're going to talk a little bit about cybercrime prevention. Through Connections, we have a series of courses on cybercrime prevention called Cybercrime Fighters. So hopefully if you find any of this information interesting or useful, you'll take a look at some or all of those classes and join us for them. So let's start with, what do we know? True or false, older adults are targeted for scams more often than younger people. Show of hands, true? So the majority think that this is true. The actual answer is false. So actually, you can see, it might be a little small from where you're sitting, but the age group of 65 plus, this is a graph from the Better Business Bureau, is actually the least susceptible group when it comes to scams. But you'll also notice that the median dollar amount lost is $390, which is more than any of the other age groups. So they're least susceptible, but also likely to lose more, whereas the younger groups are more susceptible, but essentially don't have as much to lose. Okay, so what can you do to stay safe? So one thing you can do is to use a password manager software. And what this does is it helps you to create very unique passwords that are hard to guess. We typically pick passwords that we're going to remember, right? Something that makes sense to you, names and numbers that are meaningful so that you'll remember them. But those are really easy to guess and to crack. So if you use a password manager, it's going to help you to come up with a more complicated password that's not as easy to crack, but it's also going to store it for you, and if you choose, it can automatically enter it for you when you go to log into a site. So you can see here a few of the common ones: LastPass, Dashlane, Keeper, RoboForm. So as long as you're using a reputable software program for your password management, it is a very safe and secure way to use the web. Another thing you can do is to use two-factor authentication. So this is very common with bank accounts, with email accounts like Google and Yahoo. You can use it with Amazon. There are plenty of sites that have logins that you can use two-factor authentication for, or two-step verification, sometimes it's called. And traditionally, we have the one step where you enter a username, a login, you click login, and you're ready to go. So two-step just adds an extra layer of security onto that. So you enter the username and the password, something that you know, or if you're using a password manager, something that will help you to enter. And then there's a second layer that happens when you click login. And this can be set up to be different things. You can either get a text message with a unique code. You can have a unique code emailed to you. Sometimes they'll give you the option of having a phone call with a recording that's going to give you that number or unique code that you need to enter. So you go username, password, then you're going to enter that next layer, and then you're going to be able to log in. And as we just talked about, passwords can be easy to guess. So even if a hacker guesses your password, if you have that next step in line, then they're unlikely to be able to get that code that you just had texted to your cell phone or to your email address or the call that you got with that message. So that makes it much harder for people to get into your accounts. Let's talk about some examples of phishing. So there are different themes in the phishing messages that you're going to receive. And one of the most common ones is an urgent request. And this list here actually came from EDTS blog. This is a company that does IT, it's an IT service provider company. So on their blog, they have a list of some of the more common ones from 2017. And of the urgent requests, there are things like, you need to confirm your account, or you've been locked out of your account has been suspended. Things that are going to create a sense of urgency so that you're likely to quickly take action before you stop and look at the rest of the details. So for example, they have a Bank of America email. It's not really from Bank of America, but it's pretty easy to copy a logo, take a screenshot of a logo, and put it in an email. And so they can pretend to be anybody they want to be. So in this case, there's a Bank of America thing saying there's an update required. They've got it in red letters with 2 exclamation points because they want you to feel like it's really important. You need to click this link and give us some of your personal information. And guess what? That's not really Bank of America, and you're going to be giving your information to a hacker. Or you're going to click a link and it's going to download some malware onto your device. So it's important to not react to those urgent messages until you have really carefully reviewed what is there. Other things, they may pretend to be UPS and say, you missed a delivery, you had a package delivered. So you might want to, again, take a minute before you panic and look through the details, look at the actual sender email address and determine whether or not that is really a legitimate message or not. Some other types of messages that you may see often are around this unexpected compensation. So they may say, oh, you're due a refund, or you've won, or we owe you some money for some reason. So if you get something from the IRS that says you need to come collect your tax refund, not legitimate. If Amazon is emailing you saying, oh, system error, we owe you money, probably not. And this last one here, click to see your salary, it's actually pretty common for scammers to target businesses. So if you're working and you have an email address associated with your work, you may get something that looks like it's from HR saying, guess what, you're getting a promotion, click here to see your revised salary. But it's not really from HR. And in fact, in those cases, they're targeting not just you, but the entire company, because they may be trying to get into that network. If you click a link that then gives them access to your network, now they have access to the whole staff at your company, not just your information. So it's really important that you not quickly react to an email until you've looked at all the details and determined whether or not there are any signs that maybe this isn't legitimate. There are also other appeals that are common. Usually they're all sort of emotional appeals, so they may try to pretend to be someone that knows you and act like they're in trouble. I need some money, can you please help me? And they're going to try to get your bank account information or get you to send them some money. So watch out for anything that's going to appeal to your emotions like that. The real famous common one is the Nigerian prince who emails you and says, I really want to give you some money, I just need a little bit of help from you. So there are a lot of scams out there along those lines as well. So making sure you stay safe, one other thing you can do is to think about how you surf the web. So first of all, use secure websites. And you'll know that they're secure because there will be a lock icon in the address bar. All major browsers are going to have that lock icon in the browser bar. It might look a little different or be in a slightly different place from one browser to the next, but it's unmistakably a picture of a lock. The other thing you can check is the actual URL or web address. You're familiar with HTTP. Sometimes it says HTTPS. That S indicates that you're on a secure site. So if you look for that S, then you know that you're on a secure site. And what that means is that that information is encrypted. So even if a hacker gets information, anything that's being passed back and forth on that website, it's just going to be a bunch of letters or numbers that's not going to make any sense unless they have the key to unlock that encryption. So it makes it secure and safe to do that. Another thing that you can do to make sure you're surfing the web safely is to be careful about typing the address into the address bar. So a simple typo, if you go to google.com and you accidentally type one extra O, or if you go to gmail.com and you forget to type the L or you miss the L key, you could end up in a very different place than what you were intending to go to. So it's important that you always be careful when you're typing the web address. In fact, I would recommend that instead of doing that, for sites that you go to commonly, especially secure sites with information about you, like your bank account, your email in particular, anything that has secure information about you, keep it in your bookmark bar. That way, you're always going to that same link and you're always going to get to that site that you're intending to get to, rather than typing it in every time.
Where is that? I mean, where bookmark?
The bookmarks or favorites, it's different in every browser. Usually there's a star or some icon in the upper right that you can click to say you want to add that to your bookmarks or to your favorites. So it'll just depend on the browser that you use.
Is bookmark and favorites the same thing?
Yes, bookmarks and favorites are essentially the same thing. Different browsers call it different things. So it just depends on the browser that you're using.
Favorites
Another thing you can do, rather than typing in an address, is to actually just search it on your browser. If you go to a search engine and you search for the site that you want to go to and then click on the link in the search results, you're more likely to get to the legitimate site than if you type it in and accidentally type it wrong. Another thing to keep in mind is that hackers intentionally register sites that are very similar to common sites people go to. One of the ones that we use in our course materials is whitehouse.gov versus whitehouse.com. Two very different sites. The legitimate one is .gov, but a lot of people are so used to .com that they would just automatically type .com, and then you end up somewhere you really didn't intend to be, and you could be putting yourself and your data at risk as a result. Yes?
Are you going to have handouts on this? People aren't awfully fast.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a tendency to talk fast. We do have a phishing handout that I will hand out at the end of the session here. Also, this image that you see and a couple others throughout the slides, these are all from YouTube videos that we have on our Oasis Connections channel. So you can always go to YouTube, search for Oasis Connections, and watch some of these videos there that give you information about phishing and identity theft, about password managers, and all sorts of other tech-related topics. And that is it right there, the Oasis Connections channel. Going back to, I know some of you came in after we went through the first couple of slides. In the beginning, we talked about whether or not older adults were more susceptible to scams and frauds, and it's actually not true. Older adults, age 65 and over, are actually the least susceptible age group for scams and frauds, but they have a tendency to lose more money when they do become victims of fraud. So keep in mind that cyber criminals are typically going for volume. They're not necessarily targeting a particular group. They're oftentimes just trying to connect with as many people as possible, because the more people they send that fraudulent email to, the more likely it is that somebody's going to fall for it. So in most cases, they're not targeting a particular person or a particular group of people. In some cases, they are. Seniors are often targeted because they tend to have nest eggs either in retirement fund or in home ownership. Sometimes children are targeted because they have clean credit. And we talked a little bit too about how businesses can be targeted. If you have a work-related email address, you also need to be very careful about what you click on in that work email, because you could be giving a hacker entrance into your whole work network and giving that data away.
Subscribing in YouTube, what does that mean or cause to happen?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Subscribe, when you click on
subscribe to YouTube?
What?
So when you go to YouTube, if you have an account on YouTube, you can actually subscribe to a channel, which will then give you a news feed where anything you subscribe to will pop up, new videos will pop up in that news feed. So we have a channel with all of our tech videos called Oasis Connections, and if you subscribe to that, then you'll get notifications when we put out new videos, and you'll be able to then access.
And because, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
And because YouTube is owned by Google, if you have a Gmail account, that's how the subscription happens, and you'll get notified in your Gmail that there's a new video. So I don't. Right, but that's when you see the subscribe, that's what it means. It says keep notifying me every time this channel is updated.
So just going back again, because I know some of you came in after we started. This one is one of our YouTube videos on password managers. And then we have one on the two-step verification that we talked about, having that extra layer to log in, not just a username and a password, but also getting that code after you've logged in. I think yeah. And then the one on password managers as well. So our cybercrime series of classes, we have one on password managers, we have one on choosing the best browser for you. I know we had a couple questions about browsers already too. Which browser works best for you? How do you set your browser to maintain privacy for you and to track or not track all of those things if you've heard about cookies before in your browser. So that course goes over the settings for all of that. And then the phishing and identity theft is also part of that series. So if you want to learn more about the scams and frauds that are out there, how to identify them, avoid them, what to do if you become a victim of them, then you could sign up for that class as well. Other questions?
I
Medicare, Medicaid card
Yes,
series is on there.
yes, there is a video on,
'Cause
it
they
may
said
not be
the
on the
new cards-
connections.
New cards are coming out and they're already being fraud.
Oh, so you're talking about your Medicare cards, up to this date, your social security number has been
Right,
on all your
they-
Medicare cards,
they-
right?
they
So
come out.
Medicare has realized that that's a risk when people carry their card around, so everybody will be getting new Medicare cards so we don't have a video on that, but that is a piece of personal information that you should protect if you can. Because that is something that hackers can use to try to pose as you and get information and to get things sent to them that when they're not you. So, good point.
Does any, yes,
Any questions?
yeah,
I
any,
was just gonna ask if you had any comments about the autofill, going to put something in your Word, something, everything comes up.
sure, so,
It's handy, but
yes, it is very convenient for those of us who don't want to have to retype that, especially if you do a lot of online shopping or fill out a lot of forms online. That is very convenient. We talk about that a little more in our browser class as well, and that's in your browser settings where you can decide whether you want your browser to keep track of that kind of information for you or not. So it's a personal choice between convenience and privacy, and you just have to evaluate that based on your own needs.
Do you have a list of things you can do? I was just scanned maybe 2 weeks ago on my computer, and I had no idea what to do.
Sure. So let me actually pass out the handout on phishing so you have that in front of you. First thing you should do if you think you have been a victim or if you think that your computer has become infected is run a malware or virus scan. You're welcome. And then change passwords on your accounts. You want to do that right away because if they get access, particularly if someone gets access to your email, they can use your email address to reset passwords on other accounts.
What email? They did mine through my computer shut down, and they said that they were the only ones that could fix it. And I had to write a check.
Yes, that's a common one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Turn it- I-
Just don't click, don't call.
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
That's okay, you're not the only one. It's not your fault. These people are targeting other people.
If something like that were to pop up on your computer screen, the best thing to do is to get out of it without clicking on it. So if you don't know how to do that safely, the easiest thing to remember is to just power your whole computer off. If you just shut your computer down and restart, it'll be gone. There are a couple other ways you can get around that without clicking on it, but that's the easiest one to remember. Just turn the computer off.
Just hit the power button.
Yep.
Power on off button.
so you said run the malware and change all your passwords for everything?
So in theory, it'd be nice if we could all change all of our passwords, and that's a huge task, right? If you have passwords you don't even remember, that little accounts you set up for one transaction. The primary account that you need to protect is your email account. Because remember, every time you create an account, you get an email confirming that you just set up an account. So the number one place you want to change that password and make it very secure and strong is your main email address that you use to set up all of your accounts. Because if someone can hack into that and that password is not secure, they can reply to all, they can go to all of those sites that are in your email and they can set up new passwords and take over control. Now, we might not mind if they take control of some social media account, but if you have any account that's tied to a credit card, like your Amazon card, your Amazon account, you don't want those to be taken over by someone else. So that's one of the first places. Of course, your financial institution, right? You're going to change any passwords you have with banking or retirement accounts, but also people don't always think of their primary email account as a place where hackers target.
Yeah, email is one of the most important. And if you use whatever got hacked, if you use that same password for other accounts, you want to definitely go to those accounts and change that password right away. And that goes back to the idea of using the password manager. It creates unique passwords that are hard to guess, and it stores them for you and enters them automatically, and it will give you a different password for every account that you have so that you're not repeating the same password in multiple accounts.
Do those password managers usually have a fee associated with
Many of them have a free version. For
Yes.
instance, I use one of them, and they have a free version and they have a paid version. Sometimes the paid version allows you to have 2 people protected at one time. So there are free ones. And I would do a Google search on what are the most, password managers, and because I know that LastPass was hacked last year. They did not get through to the password layer. They got into their system, but they did not get into the vault with all of people's passwords. But, those of course are places just like LifeLock. Remember when LifeLock got hacked? LifeLock's supposed to protect all our information.
yeah.
Those are targets for hackers. So you just, look for free ones and then do a consumer reports or your own research on which ones are easy to use and successful at keeping people out.
And some of them work a little bit differently than others in terms of the hardware or the process. So you just have to kind of look at how they work and figure out what works best for you personally. And, but like I said, if you're using a reputable one, their business is to protect your information. And so even though they're a target for hackers, you can be assured that they're doing everything they can to keep your passwords safe.
I'm not sure I understand. A password manager, is it a software program or is it?
Most of them are cloud-based, so you
buy
can
it, go to the.
you can
Best
set up
Buy
an
or
account
whatever, you
online.
buy.
You can
Yeah.
go to their
So-
site to start off, and then they usually will have a tool that's installed into your browser, because everything that you're doing on the internet, you're using a tool called a browser, and then it'll have a little extension, is what it's called, a little piece of software that goes onto your browser that helps you. It automated, it puts all those passwords in for you, it helps you remember, so you really don't have to remember any passwords except the one main one to all of your passwords.
So every time you go into whatever, your bank or whatever, then it automatically knows, you don't have to do anything?
If you're in your own machine, your own browser, yes.
And how much what do these things cost?
The one I subscribed to was $49.95 a year, but there was a free version. I just opted to do the more expensive version. But I researched several of them before I chose which one. I talked to people that I know, I talked to techies that I work with, what do you use? So,
What is Mark in trouble for?
Mark Zuckerberg. So that's Facebook.
That's Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Social media, and so social media is a free account, and part of it being free is that they track what you're doing and they keep your data, and they use that data to target you with advertising. But it's also been used in ways that people weren't aware of, either because they didn't read the thousands of pages of legal policy, or that's all up for debate right now whether Facebook was being deceptive or not. But that's about your data through social media. Other questions about phishing or fraud? And it's not just emails. You can get text messages. You can get things that pop up on your computer when you're browsing the web. You can end up at a website unintentionally that has dangerous links on it or asks you for information. So as technology evolves, so do the scams. And so anytime technology changes or there's a new way to communicate and do things, the scams are going to follow right behind. So we have to be careful in all of the ways that we use technology in terms of our information. Yes?
Are there any browsers that you think are better than some of the other browsers? I mean, I just updated to Windows 10, but and I've been using Microsoft Edge. In the past, I'd used Chrome, but I'm having Chrome.
Well, most of the major browsers are very good. So it's really kind of a personal choice depending on what tools you use the most on the web, what you're comfortable with. Some of them have slightly different features than others. If you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend our browser class because we go through each of the major browsers and talk about the different settings and the different features. Yes?
When you do the autofill, I find that I found in the past that I did have autofill enabled at one point, but when I went to certain websites, what have you, that had a form that I wasn't trying to fill out, it still autofilled that form on that website automatically. I mean, so is it a way you can just determine which ones you want to autofill versus some places
I don't know if you can pick and choose. It depends on the browser and the browser settings, but you can definitely have it on or off in any browser.
Yeah, see, I wanted to keep it on, but I was finding myself going to certain places where I did not care for it to autofill, but yet it was still autofilling the information. So I just turned it off, and it's still off. So, okay.
Yeah, each browser, like I said, each browser has slightly different settings for that, so we can go through that in the browser class and the different settings that you can control. Some things you can't control, you know, like I said, in some cases it may be on or off, and those are your only options. Did we get everyone's questions? Anything you want me to repeat? I know I talked really fast in the beginning. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope this was really helpful for you.